Hi, my name is Vahan Davoudian. I'm a physics experimentalist for 34 years, and today our topic is twins, brain waves versus entanglement, which is an important concept in physics. And this is the logo I created. When you click on this circle, the green circle, you can see all my 74 theories. It says Unique Physics Concepts by Vahan Davoudian, How to Promote the Science. And this is my email, vahandavoudian1948@gmail.com. And in fact, I have seen a lot of twins, and then I remember I had friends, and then always they can feel, their pain and some other things. And this amazingly, scientifically, it's not proven fact, but we can tell that it is happening because they can feel their feeling and their emotions and everything else. And in fact, human's brain, I have to explain later. We have impulses, the electrical system would work, and then in fact the human brain generates electromagnetic wave. And you may not believe that the human brain has 5 millivolts, which is a lot in science. 5 millivolts is a lot of voltage. And then so the human brain generates electromagnetic wave, also known as a brain wave. These waves are a result of brain's electrical activity, specifically the synchronized brain electrical firing the neurons. They are electromagnetic radiation similar to radio wave. And in fact, it happened a lot with the twins, and sometimes they call it ESP, extrasensory perception. But this happened. But unfortunately, scientists they don't have a proof that this is scientifically happened. But that happened a lot, and especially the twins are almost 99.8%. Genetic, they share the same genetic, and then they are grown together, and they know exactly how they want, and they can read their mind, and then sometimes they can feel their feeling and emotions. But why did I do it with entanglement? This is amazing concept in physics. I have to explain this later in quantum physics. I have to use one more. I have to use this next poster. In fact, this one shows the human's brain waves. And entanglement, I have to explain a little bit about the entanglement. This is amazing concept. If you have two particles, far away from each other, even you can say light year away from each other. If you do something on one particle, and the other one is going to be affected. If you measure one particle on one side, it's going to be affected on the other side. And in fact, this was amazing. This happened like 100 years ago, and Albert Einstein proposed this, and then he had two physicists. Their name was Podolsky and Nathan Podolsky and Rosen. So what they did, all of three of them, Albert Einstein and with these two scientists, they rejected the idea. But Niels Bohr, one of the greatest physicists at the time, he liked that idea. And then after so many debates, and then heated debate with Albert Einstein and Podolsky and Rosen, find out that they don't want to accept the fact that the entanglement is true. And unfortunately, Albert Einstein had a bad problem always, bad habit. He would reject almost everything. And I remember one case was with, when Edwin Hubble, he was talking about cosmological constant, and then he realized in 1920 that the universe is expanding. Albert Einstein did not like that idea, and he rejected the cosmological constant, and then after a while he accepted the fact. There was another case, with Niels Bohr, and Niels Bohr had the debate which happened to be one of the most important debate in the history of mankind for the science, with Niels Bohr and Albert Einstein. And after like hours of debating, and Niels Bohr proved that that happened. But anyway, Albert Einstein rejected the idea completely. So the entanglement is like this, and then the correlation is entanglement particles exhibit phenomenon that cannot be explained within, quantum physics. Unfortunately, this is so complicated that at that time they could not explain. And then after exactly 98 years, so what happened? The American scientist, his name was John Clauser, and there was another scientist, Alain Aspect, and there was another scientist from Austria, his name was Anton Zalewski. So what happened? He did it with planets, but Mr. John Clauser and his partner, they did it on a science lab. And after exactly 98 years, they proved that the entanglement can happen. And well, of course, that 98 years passed, but this is happening, and this is very important concept in physics. And this entanglement nowadays is used, for the computation, for quantum computers, and they can do so many things in science. Unfortunately, those days it was not accepted fact, but now we know that the entanglement does exist. Few minutes ago, I talked about, twins, brain waves versus entanglement. And then you can see this is the, ultrasound of the, twin A and twin B. You can see they all share the same thing, exactly the same. And here is the entanglement. But amazingly, they call it telepathy. Tele in English, or, in Latin word, means far. When they can feel their feeling, when they can feel their pain and everything else, even though if they're far apart. Well, of course, I said that, genetically they're so close. But you know what? Me and my wife, we are not close. And then I realized this was in 15 years ago. We were flying from Denver, Colorado to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. At the same time, my time was flying from Milwaukee, Wisconsin to Denver, Colorado. We were on air maybe 2 hours, and then I told my wife, guess what? Now our son is in same flight is coming. What if we see that airplane? And this was a fraction of a second. My wife said, I was thinking the same way. That was the best day of my life in science. Because I said, when I get to the Wisconsin, because my daughter was a clinical psychologist at that time, I said, I have to ask her to investigate, not herself, because she was good in psychology anyway. She could go and ask the professors and everyone else. And then we went to Milwaukee, and I asked my daughter, this is what happened. And not one time, so many times it happened. And that's not coincidence. And it looks like me and my wife, we have telepathy. And my daughter said, it is possible, because you guys live together almost 29 years, so it looks like your brains are wired together. Well, of course, not, electronically wired together, because the human brain has 5 millivolts. So we have brain waves. So what happened, we can communicate. And in fact, telepathy is always using the sixth sense, or not even, not like 5 senses, not, would say by, using senses like sight, sound, and the touch. It looks like it's just, wireless. And the reason why the scientists do not accept this, but I have seen so many cases that people say, some scientists say, women intuition. I don't know why they don't say men intuition. Sometimes women, they can feel something bad is going to happen. Where does this intuition come from? Nobody knows. But they can feel it, and they call it women intuition. And in English, sometimes they call it ESP, extrasensory perception. I used to work in with a hospital, take some pictures with colonoscopy, endoscopy, and some other things. And I remember I had two friends, one doctor, two twins, and it was impossible. You could not even tell them apart, unless if they were standing, because one of them was almost like 1.5 inch shorter, and the other one was higher. And then you could tell. But I remember one time I was at the 10th floor, and one Arthur's brother, I had to ask the name because they were so, it was amazing how similarity was so shocking. I asked him, "Doctor, how are you doing?" He said, "Well, I have a headache." It didn't take me like 5 minutes. I had to go to the first floor. His brother was there. I said, "Doctor, how are you doing?" He said, "I have a headache." I said, "Are you kidding? Your brother said the same thing few minutes ago when I was 10th floor." And imagine, these were the best doctors at the time. And I remember I have seen so many things in the twins, and this happened. And this was another thing one time happened. We were in Denver, Colorado. We were walking, and then I did not tell anything to my wife. I had to change my, the way I walk. From left to right, I changed it to right to left. And immediately I watched, my wife did the same thing. It looks like it was synchronized anyway. But this is amazing, how we can do that, and how we can, wirelessly, communicate with each other. And this, entanglement is so amazing. Why we can go from, miles away, or light years away, and then we can feel those things that you do one thing on one particle and the other one is also affected. And in fact, this Austrian physicist was so smart, he had to go to observatory, and then he had to use stars. Isn't this beyond your imagination? And they realized, and entanglement can happen even if they're far apart, like light years apart. But Mr. Glauser, the American scientist, he did it in lab, not one time. I think they maybe did like 200, 300 times. Every time they did something, the other one was affected. So I'm hoping that you guys love this video, because the human brain is so complicated, and unfortunately this is the part of our organs we don't know, we do not understand 100% how they work. But the neurons are always important. I have to get this, you can see. This part is so important because you can tell, I compared the neurons. This is a large picture of, you can see neurons like that. So I had to compare this with the fiber optics, because I had fiber optic like 8 months ago. That was great success. People love it. And imagine, you can see those red ones. Those are the, blood vessels. Then they are, doing oxygen and everything else. And this is considered exactly like this bunch over here, but the difference is both of them are, the transferring information, but this is electrical, this is in our body. But why do I have this? The human body is amazing. Why do we have sodium and potassium? Imagine, why don't we have magnesium and some other things? And if you go back in atomic theory, you can understand this much better. Both of them are so reactive. And imagine, both of them, sodium and potassium, they have free electron. You see, that's a free electron here, free electron here. So the reason why we get these impulses, and I don't know, this was a creation of God or what? How did they know? Was God the best physicist or what? Why do we have these two elements in our body? And imagine, we have sodium and potassium, and then sodium is pumping out and potassium is pumping in. So we got imbalance of charges. the negative and positive. Whenever you have imbalanced charges, so you get the impulse. That impulse is so amazing because the human body is like electrical company. So electronic and electrical company. All those sensory perceptions are with the impulses. Otherwise, we won't be able to feel any heat or pain or anything. All of them are impulses. And in fact, this was a scientist, French scientist. He discovered this. Then he realized that, what, this is the way we get the impulses because it's an imbalance of charges. And these are acting like a pump. So sodium comes in and comes out, and potassium goes in. So this is the big picture. I have mentioned this so many times in my theories. The human brain consists of billions of neurons, but unfortunately it's so complicated we won't be able to explain exactly how they work. But overall, the communication in our body, especially in the brain, is always through these impulses, which are electrical pulses. But imagine, the reason why we have this is because of these two important elements, sodium and potassium, and how easy it is to lose those free electrons. And like I said, this is a large one, and you can see bunch of neurons here, bunch there, but they have also blood vessels. So are these. So imagine it's exactly like fiber optics. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'm hoping that you guys love this video. Well, of course, it was short, and I had to explain a little bit of everything, but I'm glad you got the idea that these things happen. You can compare entanglement with the humans, with the twins brain waves, because those brains are electromagnetic wave is exactly like radio waves, so they communicate with each other. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'm hoping that you guys love it. If you love it, you can go ahead and subscribe it. Thanks a lot.